What if I told you that right now, beneath your conscious awareness, there's a hidden operating system quietly running in the background? It's this invisible, highly complex biological network that literally dictates your mood, your energy levels, how deeply you're going to sleep tonight, and ultimately how your brain is going to age over the next few decades. Today in this explainer, we are going to pop the hood on this master system. We're diving into the absolute cutting-edge science of how stress, light, sleep, and memory are all constantly communicating with each other using the exact same neuroendocrine language. It's fascinating stuff, so let's just jump right in. I want to start with a paradox that I'm sure almost all of us have experienced at some point. Picture this. You are absolutely, down to your bones, exhausted. You drag yourself into bed, you flip off the lights, and suddenly, out of nowhere, your heart is racing, your mind is spinning, and you are completely unable to sleep. You're just staring at the ceiling at 3 a.m. thinking, if my body is literally this tired, why on earth won't it just let me rest? Well, to answer that, we have to look at what exhaustion actually signals to your biology. And this quote right here, it brilliantly illustrates the answer. Insomnia is associated with a 24-hour increase of ACTH and cortisol secretion, consistent with a disorder of central nervous system hyperarousal. Basically, exhaustion doesn't automatically equal sleep, because beneath the surface, your brain actually thinks it's under attack. According to the research, insomnia isn't just a nighttime problem. It is a 24-hour state of hyperarousal in your central nervous system. Your body is pumping out elevated levels of stress hormones like cortisol and ACTH around the clock. You aren't just awake, you are aggressively, biochemically awake. But where exactly is this hyperarousal coming from? Section 1. The architecture of stress. Okay, meet the HPA axis. Think of this as your body's central control room for stress. Now, I want you to look at the HPA axis not as some kind of enemy, but as an ancient, beautifully designed survival mechanism. For our ancestors, this system managed the rapid physiological cascade between surviving a very real physical threat and then recovering from it. But here is the massive conflict we face today. Modern life has completely hijacked this system. The exact same biological alarm bell that was meant for dodging predators is now being constantly triggered by unread emails, bad traffic, and late-night doom scrolling. Just notice the sheer complexity of this system. Tracing these pathways is almost like looking at a giant biological puzzle. But I want you to focus specifically on that blue sphere labeled CRH, corticotropin-releasing hormone. In the context of our biology, CRH is an incredibly potent sleep disruptor. When your HPA axis gets activated, CRH acts on receptors in your brain to actively suppress slow-wave sleep, which is your deep, most restorative sleep, and it aggressively promotes wakefulness. So what actually happens when our daily habits start pulling these specific biological levers at the entirely wrong times? Section 2, the sleep and hormone paradox. This is where things get wild, and the crucial point is right here in the data. On the left, we're looking at the cortisol curve of someone who spent only 4 hours in bed. Notice how jagged and elevated that cortisol remains way into the afternoon and evening? Now, on the right, after 12 hours in bed, look at that deep, quiet trough in the evening. This proves that a sleep debt radically delays your evening cortisol drop and keeps your afternoon stress hormones sky high. It's a vicious biochemical cycle. You lose sleep, your body panics, it dumps more stress hormones into your system, which then makes it practically impossible to sleep the next night. And we see this exact same pattern when we compare chronic insomniacs on the left to healthy controls on the right. Just look at the black bar there representing the sleep period. The healthy controls have this beautiful deep dip in cortisol right as they're going to sleep. But the insomniacs, their curve is just flat and elevated. Their HPA axis is never fully turning off. Chronic sleep loss has effectively trapped their bodies in a permanent state of fight or flight at the exact moment they need recovery the most. So it essentially builds into this beautiful but very delicate biological tug-of-war. Think of slow-wave sleep, your deep sleep, as the biological brake. Deep sleep physically shuts off the HPA axis, rapidly driving your cortisol down to its absolute lowest point in the 24-hour cycle. But on the other side of the rope, you have cortisol and CRH acting as the chemical accelerator. High cortisol entirely prevents deep sleep. It's a literal seesaw. But this raises a really profound biological question. What happens to the human body when that brake is just permanently broken? Section 3, the biology of accelerated aging. Okay, this is the biological domino effect that we all really need to understand because it's crucial. Step 1, chronic stress keeps your HPA axis constantly activated. Step 2, that leads to sustained, unnaturally high levels of cortisol. Step 3, that constant chemical bath generates serious oxidative stress and neuroinflammation. Your brain literally becomes inflamed. And finally, step 4, this leads to hippocampal atrophy. Your hippocampus is the memory and emotional regulation center of your brain. So what we are actually seeing here is everyday psychological stress chemically transforming into physical brain damage over time. To put that into perspective, consider this staggering number, 1,000. A massive imaging study of 1,000 depressed patients showed a substantial physical reduction in the volume of their hippocampus when compared to healthy controls. Let that sink in. Their brain's actual memory center had literally shrunk. We call this the silent cascade of dysregulation. High nighttime cortisol literally blocks your hippocampus from storing new declarative memories. It causes the branches of your neurons, the dendrites, to physically shrink. It reduces your insulin sensitivity, creating metabolic dysfunction. It severely increases your vulnerability to major depressive disorder, and it's recognized as a key pathway in exacerbating the beta amyloid plaques that are closely associated with Alzheimer's disease. Dysregulated cortisol is quite literally accelerating your cognitive aging. But, and here is the most important insight of all, we actually have the power to stop this cascade. Section 4, Rewiring Your Biological Clock. Here's a real game changer. Optimizing your sleep doesn't actually start at bedtime. It begins the exact second you open your eyes in the morning. This is the blueprint for an ideal biological day. You have to anchor your morning with a strong cortisol spike, allow for genuine midday recovery, actively de-arouse your brain in the evening, and finally induce that deep, slow-wave sleep at night. So let's break down exactly how we do this. It all starts with the cortisol awakening response, or the CAR. You want your cortisol to peak sharply right in the morning because that literally sets the biological timer for it to drop at night. How do we do that? Well, consistent wake times train your HPA axis. But your most powerful tool by far is light. Getting 10,000 lux of bright light within 30 minutes of waking physically stimulates the suprachiasmatic nucleus in your brain, which amplifies that morning surge. Add in some morning protein to stabilize your blood sugar, and maybe targeted adaptogens like rhodiola rosea, which specifically supports your morning energy without overstimulating the nervous system. By doing this, you are biologically clearing the runway for evening sleepiness. Okay, but what happens when you do get to the evening and your mind is still racing? Standard cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia, or CBTI, is great, but the research shows it only really has modest benefits for severe cognitive arousal. Enter MBTI, mindfulness-based therapy for insomnia. Now, this isn't just about relaxing. Clinical trials show that MBTI acts as a highly targeted clinical tool, producing massive reductions in nocturnal rumination. It trains your brain to observe thoughts without triggering that HPA axis alarm bell, effectively taking your foot right off that chemical accelerator. And science offers us some incredible biological buffers, too. Clinical evidence highlights adaptogens, particularly ashwagandha, as powerful interventions here. By physically buffering the HPA axis, ashwagandha helps restore your glucocorticoid receptor sensitivity. It essentially turns down the volume on your entire stress response, making it incredibly effective for treatment-resistant insomnia and those states of chronic hyperactivation we talked about. You are literally using biology to heal biology. Section 5, the emergent health synthesis. If there is one single thing you take away from this entire explainer, please let it be this. Health is not just a collection of isolated habits. It's not just about doing some squats or eating a salad. As we've seen today, your health is the emergent result of countless interconnected biological processes happening every single moment of every day. Your sleep influences your hormones, those hormones influence your mood dictates your behavior regulates your nervous system controls your inflammation, and that inflammation directly dictates how fast your brain ages. Light, stress, mood, and sleep, they are all communicating in real time through the exact same neuroendocrine language. Your body is one magnificent, deeply interconnected system. So knowing that every single choice you make, every time you turn on a bright screen at midnight or let an email trigger a full-blown panic response, sends a very real physical, chemical signal deep into the memory centers of your brain, what choices are you going to make today? You have the tools now to reprogram your hidden operating system. So what invisible forces will you choose to shape your reality tomorrow? Thanks for joining me on this deep dive. Stay curious, and I'll see you in the next explainer.